Wolfman. Released January 17th, 2025. Directed by Lee Hwanel. Written by Lee Hwanel and Corbett Tuck. Starring Julia Garner, Christopher Abbott, and Matilda Firth. Rotten Tomatoes score, 58%. Metacritic, 51. IMDb, 6.1. MPA rating R. Welcome back to Real Reviews. Like always, I am your host, Lee. Today we are talking about Wolfman, the most recent Blumhouse movie. A slasher-style horror movie. Neither of those genres are really in my wheelhouse, but I will offer my perspective all the same. I am a fan of the more classic monster movies, so werewolf movies or Wolfman movies aren't entirely foreign to me. But what did I think about the movie? Let's talk about it. So the premise of the movie is that a creature inhabits the hills of Oregon. The main character's father was obsessed with it. 30 years later, after his father dies, Blake brings his wife Charlotte and his daughter Ginger back to Oregon to clean out the house. The story never gets more complicated than that. Honestly, it feels like the entire movie could be written on a few note cards, and the general idea would come across. This movie has a pretty limited cast. Total of 9 actors, but really only 4 characters of note. This is both good and bad. The limited cast doesn't give them anyone to fall back on, and it means that our 3 main characters have to be nearly flawless. And unfortunately, they aren't. I think Julia Garner as Charlotte is a pretty respectable performance. Christopher Abbott as Blake is fine for about a third of the movie, and then that goes downhill. Matilda Firth is a child, and the majority of her acting here was to be afraid, so I won't really take any points from her. A large problem comes in later when much of Abbott's performance becomes physical, and it is downright bad. So bad that a few times that people in the theater were laughing at it. I was really hoping that some of the connections made between Ginger and Blake early on would have paid off, but they don't feel like they do. They were so cute as father and daughter in the opening, and it shows that Blake truly loves his daughter, but they don't take this anywhere. The effects are a mixed bag. There aren't a lot, and the ones that are there are generally practical, which can often make things look better. There aren't any weird issues of prosthetics being noticeable or outright bad, but how they were implemented on the actors doesn't look great. There are a few cool moments where the camera spins around, and we get the perspective of the Wolfman, and the change in lighting and vibrancy is pretty cool. Later on, this includes changing how the characters look, and it is interesting because it is not something I have seen in many movies. From here on out is going to be spoilers, so if this is where you stop, thank you so much for watching. Come back and finish it after you watch the movie. Okay, so in this movie, we have arguably 2 antagonists, the wolf outside of the home and Blake becoming the wolf inside of the house. Neither works particularly well, but they do what they need to. They could have made Blake as the wolf work well by giving us some internal dialogue or some intention behind what he does, but after a certain point it mostly seems like he is just trying to kill his family like a wild animal. The movie doesn't really try to hide that Blake will become a wolf, but it certainly wants to pretend like his father being the wolf outside is a shock for some reason, but it seems extremely clear from the moment the story says that he disappeared when hunting the Wolfman. I do like the fact that these aren't full-moon werewolves, but something closer to a zombie or a Wendigo. Actually, on that note, as soon as they show how rapid the change is happening within Blake, it feels like a zombie movie where the characters inside the house don't know when the change will happen, or how to fix it, but they don't have the instincts to just end it when they should. One thing I will say is that Charlotte is a very resilient character, and she lets it on pretty early on when someone implies that she is weak. She is able to enact several plans as soon as she realizes that she has to be the one to save her and her daughter. The only reason that they don't get out sooner is because of the physical level of being outclassed by the Wolfman. It isn't because her plans are bad or that she missed a step. An argument can be made for her being the protagonist, and it wouldn't be hard to convince anyone of this. But whether you say it is Charlotte or Blake, it doesn't really matter. Neither is written in a convincing enough way to feel like they are done well. One thing that does play in the favor of the movie is that the majority of the movie is shot in a single area. A small house is where most of it happens, and if they didn't do what so many movies do and make everything so dang dark, it would have been fantastic. So on that note, the thing about dark sets it that darkness can obscure what is there, which adds to the suspense, but when everything is dark and there is nothing there, it exhausts the viewer and the suspense starts to fall away, and it becomes frustrating. This movie outright isn't long enough to feel drawn out. Shortly after we get our first real introduction to the Wolfman, I got my last call for any other drinks in my theater. Overall, I gave this movie a 5 out of 8, or a 6.25 stars. I took off points for the backup characters because the few that are there are completely pointless. Another for the protagonist just not being convincing because they didn't make a choice as to who should be in that role. It would have worked if they had dedicated the time to either. And finally for the effects, which was a combination of just not looking great and the choice of lighting literally detracting from the suspense of the movie due to overdependence on darkness. All that said, I did enjoy the movie. My recommendation comes with the note of it being strongly mixed. This isn't the worst movie you'll ever see, but it also isn't even an above-average monster or slasher movie. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment for more videos like this. I tend to have at least 2 videos out per week. Real reviews like this or AI reviews depending on releases. Until next time.